So I'm Dan from Ridan Composting. Food waste is a massive problem in the world. We all know that it can produce greenhouse gases which are damaging to the environment. Overall, the world wastes about 1.6 billion tons of food waste a year. So there are various ways to deal with food waste. There are good ways and bad ways. Landfill is one of the worst ways. There are other ways to deal with food waste. One is obviously not to waste it in the first place, or to redistribute it so that it can be used properly. Anaerobic digestion is a really good way to deal with food waste. That is obviously anaerobic, and the food waste will rot down and produce methane, which is captured, and then you can use that methane to produce energy. But the very best way is to compost your food waste. Composting is a brilliant aerobic process which naturally occurs all over the world in every forest, garden, grass verge, anywhere in nature. Composting is happening all by itself. When organic matter, food waste, garden waste, forest waste, anything that dies and falls to the ground, breaks down aerobically in the air, it'll make compost, which traps carbon. It doesn't release methane, and the carbon returns to be captured in the soil. Just 1% of organic matter in the soil can store 10 tons of carbon per acre. So it's a massive carbon capture advantage. Compost is fantastic stuff. It enriches the soil and it captures carbon, and it promotes life to grow more food. You can have your food waste collected by your council. Normally they'll collect it from the curbside and take it away and compost it for you, producing compost in a centralized facility. The only downside for that is the road transport, because obviously they'll send a truck to collect your food waste, and that's quite a polluting item. So composting it yourself, composting your own food waste at your home or your school or your business, is the ultimate way, because you can turn that food waste into compost without producing any greenhouse gases, or very few, some CO2, but it's a carbon neutral process. And you end up with this rich compost, which is a fantastic addition to the world because it's going to promote more life. And you can actually make compost by yourself, but it's much better to do it with a piece of equipment, either a compost box or a composting machine for bigger amounts. The Ridan composter is a great machine for this. You can add your food waste, and you can put in any food waste, not just fresh peelings, uncooked stuff. You can put in meat, dairy products, fish, whether it's cooked or raw. It can all be put into the Ridan, and then you add the wood. So you can use either sawdust or wood chip, and you can usually find those as a waste product from a carpenter or a sawmill, somebody like that, a tree surgeon maybe. And when you add that to the food waste and mix it together, it creates really good composting conditions. Mixing it together is really easy in a Ridan. You just turn the handle and that mixes everything together inside a insulated chamber. So it's a big green vessel with a paddle system inside and a airflow system as well, which controls the airflow. So because it's got all the right ingredients and the microbes set to work in there for you, billions of them are all at work, and they create lots of heat. That heat takes out a lot of the moisture as steam. So when you turn the handle, the mixture inside gradually moves along. It spends about 2 weeks inside the Ridan, and then when each time you turn the handle, what you put in 2 weeks ago falls out of the other end into a bucket, and you simply put that bucket full of mixture. It's not compost yet, but it's getting on that way. You put that into what we call a maturation box, and that's simply a big box which is a little bit insulated and it's got some airflow in, so the composting continues to happen in the maturation box. you need to leave it in the maturation box for at least 3 months. After about 3 months, you get lots of worms in there. You get millipedes and little beetles of all sorts, and the whole mixture cools right down. It becomes dark and nice smelling stuff it smells of soil. And at that stage you can use it, or you can continue to store it, and it'll just improve all the time. And it becomes really quite attractive, valuable stuff, especially if you're a gardener. The things you do have to watch is that you don't want the compost to turn anaerobic. Obviously, if it turns anaerobic, that's rotting. It'll start to stink. It'll be wet and cold and not very nice. And everybody's got a bit of a story about when they tried composting and it didn't work. Usually people turn up their noses. There was a bad smell, that probably flies and things like that. Well, if you do it properly and use a Ridan, it's quite easy to avoid that happening. You end up with a great product at the end of it. There are around about 500 or 600 schools in the UK using Ridan composting systems now, from preschools, nurseries, right the way through primary schools and secondary schools, colleges and universities. There are different sizes of Ridan machine, and some places even use 2, 3, 4 Ridan machines side by side if they've got a lot of food waste. In schools, quite often the challenge is to organise the logistics of collecting the food waste, moving it to the composting area, and then actually somebody doing the composting, which doesn't take long, but it needs to be done pretty much every day. It's just a 5-minute process every day. Very simple. So if at your school you'd like to start composting your food waste or recycling it into a magic substance called compost, then just get in touch with us at Ridan Composting and let us know how many people are at your school or how much food waste you make, and we'll give you some help to set you up with the right sort of equipment. It does cost money, so you might need to raise some funds, but there are lots of funding sources these days who are keen to help with sustainable initiatives in schools. So good luck, and I hope to speak to you soon.